on.
We're not there. Oh, no.
We're there.
Okay.
So, hi everyone. Thanks for joining in, and we are very excited to have Anna teaching live. So Anna is going to be teaching live here at PotomacBeads warehouse for you and your viewing pleasure, bead embroidery. So you guys should be super pumped because I know this gets a little bit hard to learn for some of you guys, and I'm really excited to be able to have her school me as well. So I did bead embroidery. I picked it up for the first time in like 2 years, and now I am flowing with questions to ask you, Anna, and having fun.
Hopefully I have answers.
Maybe. Hopefully you have answers. If not, this is going to be
I don't know the
disappointing live
questions.
class. You don't know the
I
questions.
feel like I'm going on Oprah and no one told me the questions.
Everybody should have pre-done the questions. So,
Yeah.
hello to everyone joining in. And so, to start out with the idea of bead embroidery, what is bead embroidery, Anna?
So, embroidery with beads.
Embroidery with beads.
So what you're doing is you're taking a thread and a needle, you're adding some seed beads to it, and then you're attaching it like you would with embroidery. You're just attaching it to another surface. I have some earrings here that I did with bead embroidery.
You're wearing a fantastic pendant.
This is kind of embroidery fringe. So you're kind of drawing like with embroidery, like how you draw with like the different colors of thread through the thread needle. It's the same, but you're picking up beads.
Very fun. Yeah. So we are going to, we'll have this video also for those of you that say that Anna and I talk over each other, or Anna and I talk too quickly. This video will be saved, so don't worry. Don't feel like you have to gather all your supplies right now. I would actually suggest watching the video without beading, and then going back and trying to bead along with us. We'll also put links under this video after it is published to some of the other bead embroidery videos that we already have completed. So we'll be able to do that as well too. So what do we need to get started for bead embroidery?
So today what we're going to do is some bead embroidery with a cabochon. So what we've got, can we go to the the board? Okay. So to start out here, we have, this is going to be our foundation that we're going to work off of. And if you've done embroidery before, you know you've always got that foundation. You're always working on something. And this is called Lacy Stiff Stuff. It's basically like a stiff kind of felt. You can get your needle through it really easily, but it just provides a really nice foundation to work on. And then we have our cabochon, and we're going to position that wherever we want that there. And you have this piece of ultra suede. This will come in all the way at the end. This is going to be your backing, and this will hide all of our
thread mess.
All of our mess.
Yeah. The reason I put it down also is so people could see, so that way it wasn't the white on top of the white. So I put that down for that also.
I thought that was a hint.
No. And rather than a hint, it was like, here's a surface that people can actually see on. Is that nice camel color as well.
Yeah, that's actually very smart. So we've got our foundation, which is of course very important, otherwise you wouldn't be able to do anything. We've got a selection of beads, of course, because you want to be able to put some beads around that cabochon, and then just a threaded needle.
And what do you recommend for needle size, thread type?
Yeah, so I really like using something like the 1G or the KO. I grabbed this 1G today in this color because it goes with the rest of the colors we're using. And you actually really don't see the thread very much in bead embroidery because all the thread that you're going to see, like all your knots and anything kind of loose, would be on the back, and you're going to cover that. So the thread color isn't as important as bead weaving, where you may have, beads bent and you see like, everybody who's done it knows what I'm talking about, like little red angle weave corner, and you've got like that white thread sticking out, and you've got a black bead, and you're like,
out of 15.
You don't see it that much in bead embroidery. So the color's still, I would say, pretty important because you don't want something too far off, but you're not going to see it that much.
And then also in the live, I was talking about this Beading Foundation. Comes in white and black. And then what if I'm afraid I might see through? What could I do with this Beading Foundation? If I'm like, oh, I might see through.
So you can always dye it. You can use like a fabric dye. You can use a marker. just kind of color it in before you start beading.
Before. Hold on, I got to
That's very
bend
important.
bend it back right there and try to get, let me get my ballpoint pen.
No, what I would recommend is if you are afraid that you're not going to get your beads very close together and you're going to start seeing that white come through, definitely throw this in with some little, like some Rit dye, some fabric dye, and dye it before you start beading on it.
Don't dye your beads. Yeah. Or just use even a Sharpie marker. If you're doing a big project, that might be where you're like, oh yeah, I want to dye it. But if you're just doing like a small project, like we are, just a little pair of earrings, you're not going to be able to see it.
Where you're going to see it most is like on the edge here, but we're going to cover that up too.
Wonderful. Okay, so that's kind of the basics of what we're going to be using. What size is the cabochon?
Okay, so we did, only two things that we didn't mention were the Slip N Snip scissors and some Locktite glue. You're going to definitely need some scissors and some glue if you're doing anything with a cabochon. You're going to want to put a dab of glue to hold that in place while you're working.
So, and a size 10 needle, you said?
Yeah, size 10. We were working with some 12s earlier, and they're just... Yeah, I mean, you want a stiff needle because you're going to be punching through fabric. So if it's a 10 or a 12, the thickness doesn't really matter so much, but you want something sturdy, and the 12s were just too flimsy.
So short, sharp when you're looking at John James, or you want that short needle when you're looking at Tulip. And then also another question before we get started, is there anything that is limited to bead embroidery that you say stay away from?
The only thing I can think off the top of my head would be something that may have like a sharp edge and snap your thread. Off the top of my head, that's all I can think of. Like sometimes I use like Swarovski crystals, or a crystal or something that has like a really sharp hole, or a metal bead that maybe like in the mold, like it got a little bit of like a sharp edge to it.
But really nothing's off limits.
Not that I can think of, I mean, like nothing
ready to go.
Liquid, fragile, perishable.
And Potomac Beads, I saw, just put up a material list also, so thank you so much. So I did a 25 millimeter cabochon when I was playing around, and then I realized, oh my goodness, we're never going to be able to finish this when I make my replica.
We scaled it down a bit.
We scaled it down a bit. So as it's listed, we're using 12 millimeter cabochons that we're going to be working with for this as well too. So team what? Team Potomac Beads. There we go. Team Potomac. Sounds good. All right. So Anna is going to go over step number 1. So Anna, what is our step number 1? Anna.
So if we go all the way back to the very beginning, step like -2 would probably be
pick out your beads.
Pick out your beads, and then step -1 would be,
purchase your beads.
Purchase your beads. cut yourself. So so step 1 would be basically, now that you've got everything gathered, figure out what size you want to do, and then what size your finished piece is going to be, and then you want to cut a piece of Lacey's Stiff Stuff or whatever foundation you have. Probably a little bit bigger than that, because you can always make it smaller, you can't make it bigger. So you don't feel like you have to be super conservative. Go a little bigger and scale it down. So
I went too far, Anna has instructed me, before scaling it down, but we'll conquer that as we go. But I had actually, you see, I cut a piece, and I was intentionally going the whole way to the bottom here on mine. And if I started out with a really big piece, it's more difficult to work with. Yeah, definitely. So you want it to be manageable, but bigger than your overall piece, so that you can then trim the edges down. And again, like she said, you can't put Stiff Stuff back on. Right, you can take away, so don't cut it too small. And if you know the shape that you're going to be doing, you can also kind of draw on that or figure it out, pencil and... Yeah. Do you have a... I have a pen. Yeah. So if... I tend to just sort of go for it. I'm not huge on stencils and things like that, because it's just not me. But if you want to make sure that you have a plan before you start, we're trying to do this teardrop shape, but just on a smaller scale. So I know I want to have this down at the bottom, and then if I wanted to just sort of draw out,
Your pens are horrible.
Hold on, here's another one. I do have bad pens
It could be the stiff stuff too. I don't think it
Yeah,
works
it doesn't
very well
like to
there
be
yet.
drawn on it.
So we could just draw a little point on top of that and say, yeah, that looks like about what I want to do. So I know this is a good position and I have room to make my design from there.
Somebody else asked how long do they want the thread to be. The nice thing with bead embroidery,
doesn't matter.
You can tie a knot and you can go and add new thread. So think about sewing a button. Oh, you run out of thread, just tie it on. So rather than super long, it's almost easier to start with 2 feet.
Just do what you can handle. I like to, as a rule of thumb, just sort of do one complete like arm's length because it's really comfortable to work with that. Like that's your arm's length, so that's easy for you. But yeah, it's so much more easy to add thread to embroidery project than to a bead weaving project.
So it doesn't matter, and that was Sue's question. So Sue, it doesn't matter if you're doing a 12 millimeter cab, 18, 24.
Yep.
I started out with probably about 3 feet of thread. And I did use wildfire thread because that's what I had at home. And it was fine for the project. I definitely used that as well too.
Yeah, you can definitely use that. I just prefer
The
the
silkiness
and the more, it's like a thread like when you do like the 1G or the KO. So, after step 1,
After your beads, purchasing your beads, impatiently waiting for them to arrive.
At this rate, we're gonna have step 85.
We're 10 minutes. We're 11 minutes in already, Anna. Glue that cab down.
Yes. So, so now we know where we want our cab. I'm gonna put just a little bit of glue on this guy. The purpose of gluing for me is really just to make sure that it doesn't move around a whole lot.
And can I hold yours just to the side a little bit so I can show people? So you notice the glue isn't everywhere. The glue is just right, if I can get the camera angle right, it's just a little dab right there in the middle.
Yeah,
So
just a little bit.
You're not gluing the whole way out because you don't want the glue to extend past your cabochon.
Yeah, because if you get glue on the stiff stuff where you're going to be working, it's going to dry, it's going to be harder to get your needle through, and it's just unnecessary. You're not gluing to hold the cabochon down forever, you're just gluing it for the length of time that you're working with it. Because like you can see here, you're going to have a bezel around it to hold it in, so this is just to keep it from moving around too much.
Very cool. All right.
Okay.
So then what is your next step when it comes to doing it?
Okay, so now, even though I've just glued this down, the glue is already holding it, so it's fine. I can go ahead and work with it right away. You can either, now I know you like to tie a knot, right? Yeah.
But with the wildfire, it was easy.
I don't tie a knot, and
You
I'll
just
show
go.
you.
Okay,
I
show
just
me
go.
how.
Yeah, I'll show you what I do. And we're going to use this blue, right? This is our base color.
Yep, our base color is our blue.
So that's it's a real nice color.
You picked it up. Silver lined cobalt, for those of you wondering. And it's Mandala Emerald Isle is the cabochon that we're using. So
I'm going to just take my needle from the back to the front, from the underside to the top side, and I'm going to get as close to my mandala. That's all
my
cabochon as I can. Now this is what I do. I don't know that this is any particular technique or if anybody else would tell you to do this. This is what I do because even though the back doesn't matter, I get a little crazy about keeping it neat. I leave myself a little tail and I just hold that. I'm going to pick up a couple beads here because I'm going to do a peyote stitch. So if you do 2 beads at a time, that will give you the foundation for that peyote stitch. So you're going to pick up 2 beads and just bring them as close to where your thread and needle's coming out of the stiff stuff. And then you're going to look, you want like a bird's eye view of your cabochon, and you're going to pull this out straight.
And they have a better view than we do.
Yeah, you do. You have a much better view. So you'll be able to tell if I do this correctly. And then with your threaded needle, you just want to go into the stiff stuff just at the edge of your beads, because you want your thread needle, or you want your thread to come up through one side. You're going to pick up the beads and come down. You don't want to have
you want to draw kind of a line from the middle. So you
Yeah.
think your thread needs to end in the middle in between your beads of that
yeah.
pivot.
So as I pull this,
Those two beads.
I shouldn't have a lot of extra thread over on this side. I want it to stay as close to the edge of the beads as possible, I guess is what I'm trying to say here. Now when I flip it over, since I didn't do that knot, I just held on to this tail. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back basically the length or the width of one bead between my between where I came out with my thread on either side. And I'm going to catch my tail of my thread, go down through the center of those two marks.
Ah, so smart.
And I just catch it.
Very smart.
And I do that all the way around so that my tail just gets
oh wow, you are.
I am.
You are into that. So if you want to see my
crazy.
little example that I started, so Anna can show the next step, I tied a knot.
Hey.
So hey,
but it
there you go.
works.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know why. I just like doing it that way.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
So now my thread needle my thread's coming out between the two beads, and I'm gonna go forward through my bead. I'm only going through the one 11-0. I'm going to pick up another 2 seed beads. And if you're saying, why don't you pick up more than 2? It's just because I'm setting up for peyote stitch. If I wasn't doing peyote stitch, I would not be picking up only 2 beads.
I did 3 at a time as I was getting ready for our next sample piece that we're going to grab. I did 3 at a time. But one thing that I will say, when I did mine here, I did 3 at a time. And then I got to the end of my peyote, and you can see right there, I had to do 2 beads. So I did have a space in it where it didn't, you can't really tell, but if you look closely, I did not have an even amount for my peyote stitch. So
yeah, that would drive me crazy.
And thanks, Anna. Thanks, Anna, for your confidence there.
I mean,
you did a great job getting started.
I have definitely done that. But you know what I have done when I realize that I'm going to have an odd number, I make sure that that's towards the top, and that becomes my bail.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Because it doesn't matter then. It's like, oh, well, that's just now my
Maybe
two that I make the bail off of.
I might hang
Maybe
some
you're
cord.
making it this way now.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. So again, I'm just going to flip to the back here, and I'm backtracking. So I'm always backtracking one bead. My thread on the other side will be coming out just behind, like the front of like my little bead train.
The bead,
yeah,
just
my little
chugging
bead
along.
train going around. I'm going counterclockwise, and I'm gonna go through the front. The front.
So when I did mine, just out of curiosity, I went back through all 3 beads. So I did 3, and then I went back through all 3. No right or wrong.
I don't think there's really any right or wrong. The only thing I will say is, did you go back through 3? You went back through 3, picked up another 3.
Correct, and then back through.
Okay,
So,
so
I'm
you're still
basically sewing
backtracking.
through. Yeah,
You're
always
still
doing
backtracking.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say as long as you are backtracking, that's good. If you don't, your beads tend to just be in their little groups and they don't really connect to each other.
Right. So you always want to
Just
backtrack.
flop.
You're always back stitching. For those of you that know stitching, you're always back stitching your design.
Yeah. So I'm going to do just one more here. So I've added 2 beads. I'm just pulling my thread out straight, pushing these beads, the new beads, close to the old ones, going down through my stiff stuff just at the very end of those beads.
And you can flip it
And I'm
over
gonna
and you're
backtrack.
looking through that and you're saying, okay, here's halfway between those beads, so that's where you know where you're putting the needle through.
Yeah,
Here
I
for
always
me,
flip it.
I always flip it over too, and then you can say, all right, here I'm going back through, so it's kind of connecting each one.
Yeah.
And then as you progress and you have more on, and you have more and you get towards the end, ding, 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 look, Anna finished that so quickly, all the way done. Okay. So.
Oh, and it's got a
thread and needle on it.
Okay, cool. So, yeah, so now I've added, we'll just pretend that's a group of 2 instead of 3.
3 made it
And
match.
so, you have no idea if you have an even number on here, do you?
I don't, but that's okay.
That's okay, because it really doesn't matter.
So going back through.
Yeah, I'm just going to set myself up here.
And I have a size 10 in Wildfire, so it's going to feel really different picking it up.
Yeah, but it's fine. I mean, you can use Wildfire.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a personal preference. So what I'm going to do is, since so far all we've done is go around once and done the backtracking each time, I'm going to go through all of these beads and just just go through all of them in order. I like doing that because it just kind of cinches it together. If any of them are loose, because as you're going around and adding them, sometimes you're not quite as
close as
you'd like to be. Yeah.
On my larger piece, it made a huge difference, and I even think I can do it one more time to go back through the entire row because it made a way nicer line. I also felt like the seed beads were way easier to kind of work with the line than the Delicas because the Delicas are tubular shaped. It was harder for me to get it to look like a tube and a line. So I actually found the seed beads easier to use than the Delicas.
Yeah, I only generally use the Delicas for the peyote. But you just have to know it's a slightly different look because they are more tubular, so you're going to notice if anything's out of line, whereas with the seed beads, since they're rounded, you're not going to notice as much. Okay. So now we're doing peyote.
Yep.
So I'm going to use a
different color. We're using that
different
bright
color.
green. And while Anna's getting ready and setting up for her peyote, just to explain, we did one here that has the peyote stitch starting with the green, so you don't need to do 11 O's to start out with. We did 11 O's, then we're going into Delicas to follow along the bigger one here, so you guys can see the difference in color, really. But you prefer to start yours with Delicas generally?
Yeah, I prefer to start with Delicas, but it's really, again, like personal preference. The Delicas are nice doing the peyote because they fit really nice and tight together. But really, yeah, you can do it with Delicas or 11s.
And I grabbed this just to show you that we're going on to a next step where we're doing the Delicas here. But if you know that you don't want to cover more of the cab, you could have added a little bit more glue and not made it so that the Delicas are actually holding them in place.
Yeah, and this is actually a little 2-hole cabochon that I use that has 2 holes in it.
Hey.
2-hole cabochon. So I just sew the bead on, so I don't have to have any bezel to hold it together because it's sewed on.
So Sue asked, she said, what's the top of the cabochon? What's on top of the cabochon to make it so shiny? Glass. So the top of the cabochon is actually glass. And then...
yeah, so it's actually an image under a glass cabochon.
Okay, and then another way that Erica showed was starting with 4, passing through 2, and then that keeps you on track for peyote as well too. You can do 2, you can do 3.
Yeah,
I find
can do any
4,
number.
after 4, it gets kind of like, you're getting a little wonky there going around too.
Yeah, I like doing 2 at a time because that's basically how you do a peyote stitch. You
So it's
like up, down,
kind
up,
of pull.
down. Yeah. Because then as you're backtracking, you're setting yourself up for one being up and down.
Yeah.
So it's more natural.
And then also keep in mind you can do 2 drops. So if you have a really big cab, you could think, oh yeah, go back and like Donna was saying, Erica, Sandora showed her, go in and then you do 2 drop too. So there's no limitations.
Yeah, there's really no right or wrong with the embroidery, which is one of the things I like about it. You can really do whatever you want, and everybody has their own little way of doing it and their own preference.
Yeah.
So the peyote stitch, you're just going to come out of any of the beads on the base here. You're going to pick up one of your beads that you're going to start doing for the peyote. And if you've done peyote before, it's really easy. You know exactly what you're doing. You're just skipping one bead and going through the next. So your first row of peyote, you're going to want to make sure that you skip one bead, go through the next. And you're going to make sure that as you go, the beads that you're adding on are going to go to the top.
And sit towards the top.
Yeah.
The other thing to mention, anytime you're doing peyote or a bezel around something, because basically you're bezeling now, you want to make sure that, so around those blue beads, when you're looking at it, where's our little just started sample piece? Just a little tiniest one.
Oh, the little guy, did he fall off the edge?
He fell off the world. When you have it, anyway, when you have that little one thing to think about is as you are going in and doing the peyote stitch 2 on top, try to sew to the top of the blue bead. So your blue bead already has 3 strands of thread going through it. When you sew through the top of it, so if this is your blue bead here along the base, and you have your blue bead, there's 3 strands, 1, 2, 3, already going through it. When you add your Delica, you want to try to sew above those 3 strands, so that way it will fold in and go better towards the center.
Yeah, and as you do your second row of peyote, it'll look much better, of course.
And it really pulls it in
Yeah.
together. And like Anna said, something that is awesome about the bead embroidery, and we're really going to go over more so the backing, and we started out how to get that started foundation and how to keep going, is that you can really make it your own. You can do tons and tons of different stuff. So as Anna's quick sewing her first round, this is intentional.
talking.
I pushed her over so that way this is my turn to talk. You can really go to town when it comes to it. Check out some other lovely bead embroidery examples. But the 2-old cab here, Anna just did 11s, another row of 11s, then a row of 15s, then another row of 11s. So you don't have to do the peyote stitch up. You can, but you don't have to, something to keep in mind. On this one here, Anna also used 15 O's to really cinch in the center. In my larger cab, I did not. And in this one, again, she didn't do it at all. We're then going to show, after your first round of the peyote stitch, especially going from the blue to the neon, you're going to, or that bright yellow. And for those of you wanting to know the color, it's frosted opaque glazed yellow. It's one of the new Delica colors, one of the newer ones.
It's really kind of like an avocado, like the inside of a fresh avocado.
It is.
I'm surprised it was called yellow.
Well, and they called a different one avocado, I think. We do have an avocado.
Oh, so they already had an avocado.
Yeah.
Okay. So I went all the way around, and we had an odd number of beads.
Of course we did.
So maybe if I finish this, my bezel's going to go right here.
We'll see. It's going to go to the side anyway.
Someone's going to get
Because
me a
Anna's then
grab
going to
bag.
pick back up this one. Then we're going back to this guy.
Yeah. So I went through, I finished my first layer of peyote. You can see my Delicas are kind of all wonky, and that's fine. I'm going to straighten them out on this row. So I'm going to step up here to my second row. So I'm going to go up through, wildfire and a size 10 needle. This is
Tight. Good thing
tight.
you're done after this.
I always have a pair of pliers near me because I just need to
Pull
get that
that
through there. Yeah. My hands don't grip it well. Okay. So I'm just going to step up and go through my Delica. And again, just peyote stitch where I'm going to pick up a Delica, and now I can just go through the next Delica because that's the one I don't have to think too much about skipping a bead because I've got these in a different color. But it's the same pattern. You're skipping one, going through the next. So as I add my next row of Delicas here, it's going to cinch everything in. It's going to take those wild Delicas that are kind of going everywhere, and it's going to pull them in. And you'll start to see it's going to create a nice line of color here instead of
Instead of the
craziness
wonkiness
that I created.
Yeah, and you can see this is basically a finished version of the exact same where you have the two. And I actually did 3 rows of peyote because I think once you do that third row is really when it starts to look nice. Like you pulled it in here with the 15s, which while you were off to the side, look, it magically became a teardrop. So Anna is now back to the, keep going.
Step up again, add another layer, and using the same exact technique, peyote, I just did little 15s in between the Delicas at the top. If you're using 11-0 Delicas, I love ending with 15s because it just sort of creates a nice little circle in there, takes away the roughness of just having the peyote or just having the Delicas. So yeah, just
and the
creates
bigger,
a nice,
obviously,
nice circle.
the bigger the cabochon, the more it.
The more you can build it in.
Correct.
Yeah.
All right. So I was nice to you, and I put on a needle. Now show us how. So I cut that down for you. So this is the one. This is step number 3 to show you. So I went ahead and I went ahead and
yeah, and you can see I started this one because look.
It's a lot tighter and nicer than mine. So Anna started
well,
that
that's
one.
not what I meant.
That's what you meant.
Because it's yeah, because somebody very anal retentive did it. So this one. Where are we? I don't even know where we are.
Now we're adding to after you have it bezeled in. We're in Maryland. After you have it bezeled in, if you want to do another row,
yes, okay,
do some
that's where
blues
we are.
again, or maybe this pretty color. What color do you want to do? Make me more creative looking.
We've also cut down the stiff stuff so that I have a little bit more of a direction. So I know as I'm going to build outward from my bezel, Either I can cut it like that, or I can do with a pen, I can just mark it out, but that way I know where my design's gonna go.
And then I have a question for you. So I cut this while Anna was talking. Did I cut it right? Do I want to do it just basically, I want it to disappear behind the 11 O's, right?
Yeah, that's fine. And a lot of times what I would do is just kind of cut the general shape, and then like down here, if you just want to have one line, that's fine.
Yeah.
There's really two different ways you can do it. You can go ahead and pre-cut it, which is always a little bit risky because then you're limiting yourself and you're saying, okay, this is my definite shape and that's all I have. But it also helps to give you that nice line so that as you're working, you know what area you're staying in. Yeah.
So with this, the other thing that I thought, if I wanted to add something to the bottom, I could just come off of it and do peyote stitch. So you can say, oh, I could actually go in now and I could do right angle weave too and create or do some fringe.
Yeah,
so you're not
I do
limited.
a lot with adding edges and embellishments. Yeah.
Hence the necklace that you have on.
Yeah. So you're only limiting the place where you can actually do the embroidery, not where you can bead. Yeah. So I'm going to come up.
Okay, Shu said struggling. Do you come up between beads and then go back through the stiff stuff? Come up and bead, or do you go up between beads? So in this, where did our little one go?
So at what stage is she
I think we're
referencing?
back at stage number 1, and let me see if we got it on the floor.
For the peyote or for the
original row.
Okay.
And I think that matters.
Do you come up between beads, then go back through the stiff stuff, come up, add beads, or do you come up between the beads, go through a second bead? So you're gonna keep going through the stiff stuff, if I understand correctly. I think she's talking oh, Eva already answered. She said the ladder. The ladder.
The ladder. So I have two I grabbed the original piece as well.
Yeah.
So
you are, okay.
So Anna came out between those 2 beads, sewed through the 1, adding 2 more. I'm going to pull it kind of against my cab at an angle. That's the way that I think is the easiest. I have a darn 12 needle on, so it's going to be hard to go through that stiff stuff. I'm going down right after it to the middle of the 11s that I think. And then when I'm going back through here, I'm going to turn it over. And basically you're connecting the dots. And you're saying, here's dot number 1 that I'm coming out of, dot number 2. I'm going to go straight between those 2 dots.
And that'll bring you out between your 2 beads.
That'll bring you out between your 2 beads. And then, once you're through those 2 beads, sew back through that second bead. And
the front bead. Yeah.
And then I add 2 more and rinse and repeat.
Yeah. Hopefully that cleared it up. If not, if we were talking about something not what you were talking about, just ask again. So what I'm going to do now to continue to work on my design and build it out is I'm just going to bring my thread needle to the surface again, take it out to the front here, and let's see what color. I'm going to add the blue, right? Let's do the blue.
Blue or that pretty turquoise color? Either one. Which color do you want, Anna?
Let's do the blue because I already have a little bit of
blue back.
Okay. So now, since I'm just adding beads, I'm just basically making lines of beads. I don't really care if I'm just picking up 2 at a time. So depending on how large of a surface you're going to cover, you can pick up 2 beads, 8 beads. I mean, 8's a little crazy, but you want to pick up, a good number of beads. Don't pick up 1 or 2. I'm going to pick up 4, and I'm going to use the same technique as when I did the peyote stitch. I'm going to go down through my stiff stuff, just at the end of those beads, pull it through. And I'm going to backtrack again about halfway through. So if I flip it over, I can see, like Allie said, my point A and my point B where my thread went in and out. And I'm just going to go in between, poke my needle through the stiff stuff, and then I'm going to go through again, now the 2 beads at the front of my train. I like the little train analogy. We're taking a little ride.
Taking a little ride on the train.
Yeah. So I
ride it. Come on, ride the train. Ride it. She's really excited. I'm sitting here while
so
she's trying to teach.
No, this would be such a boring class. So again, pick up 4. I'm just going to take my needle straight down at the end of those beads. Flip. Now, you can either go about halfway back again through 2 beads, or if you want to make sure it's really secure, you can go back your 4 beads plus 2. So you're backtracking 6.
Even further.
Yeah. I mean, there's really no rhyme or reason. Everyone who does embroidery is going to tell you what works for them. But I think one of the most important lessons to learn when you're doing bead embroidery is, learn the basics and understand what tools and materials you need. But then, just kind of understand what everybody does, talk to your friends who do it, but then just do what works for you.
That's a great. You do you.
You do you.
And then we also had a request once you're doing your line there, if you can show your necklace too. So people want to see the progression then of what you can do. So
this is actually not embroidery, but it is bead. It's like
bead
brick
weaving?
stitch and fringe.
Do you have stiff stuff behind your?
No, I don't actually.
Oh, I thought you had embroidered.
No, and I just pulled my clasp.
You did just put. You need some glue, and we'll also show how to repair.
I actually just put the clasp on before
coming over. So you didn't let it dry long enough.
I didn't let it dry long. I knew that was going to happen.
But good thing we have a brand new super Locktite.
I did that on purpose so you could show people how to fix it.
There you go.
So I feel like who was that actress who at the Oscars fell down the stairs?
You're good.
Yeah, so I just had a piece of filigree.
Oh, I like the filigree.
And just did some brick stitch off the edge, and you can see how far I did the brick stitch. And then I went back through and added the fringe, and I'm still working on it.
Pieces in progress.
I still have some work to do on it. That's why I just put the necklace on it. I figured it would look nice on camera, so I might as well just do that. Yeah. Now I can't wear it anymore. So
bummer.
So that's disappointing.
Okay.
But
so basically you can keep going and you can keep adding and you keep doing your line.
So when I'm done with this, I'm going to come back through again and take my needle and thread through all of it. It just cinches it. It keeps those beads in line to have another piece of thread continually running through it.
So once you have your design, I'm going to let Anna keep going with her blue so that way she can get done her blue row and talk about how she's going to change direction or do the teardrop and that sort of thing. When you're doing then additional beads on top, I actually did not add this green row, this Delica row, until after the fact, basically, because I did it to cover up some white space that was in there, because you can't really do 1 bead, 2 beads. So you can always make this as 3-dimensional as you want to. So I'm not finished here. I was going in and doing additional rows. Maybe I am finished. I have a lot of things that I want to do differently after doing this. I'm not going to lie. But say I was finished. So now what is my task? I need to knot off my thread.
So what you're going to do is, and I'll let you do this.
Yep. Well, you're beading away.
You can cut any excess thread, or not thread, foundation.
Okay.
You've got.
And I'm going to take my wildfire thread, or my thread burner, burn my thread down, and that will keep my thread actually from coming out without doing a knot. So I want to kind of clean up the back first, right?
Well, you don't have to worry too much about it, but just you can cut any extra.
That there's not any big bubbles.
Threads. Yeah, exactly.
Because then
when
you're
you
going to feel it.
Yeah, exactly. When you glue the back on, you don't want to have rough spots that leave
a lot of space on it.
You don't want to look like you got some crumbs from the cookie you were eating as you were making this caught
under. You're like, oh man.
I opened my glue today at my desk, and I thought maybe there were some cake crumbs in it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I'm going to go
brought a cake in yesterday.
And we had cake crumbs. Okay, so I'm going to go back through here, and I'm going to get as close as I can to that thread without cutting this stuff, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
You want to leave
So
a
the first
little-
thing I'm going to do is just go through here.
You can leave a little bit of space. If you get really close, that's good. But if you leave a little bit of space, that's fine too. Because you're going to need a little edge to catch on to. Yeah.
So when I flip this over, I want to do this on the back side because I want to make sure I'm not cutting any of my thread.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I usually do it on the front, but you do you.
Me do me. Okay. So that way I know I'm not cutting any of my thread stitches.
Yeah, and you can always go back through and trim it a little if you didn't get close enough here or there.
And this is the part that I'm actually most excited about because I have never finished off a bead embroidery piece well.
Oh, wow.
And I feel like when I look at yours, they always look really, really nice. So this is the Snip N Slip pliers. So I have all this extra stiff stuff. If you have a big piece, keep it. You never know when you're going to use it. I mean, we're using this tiny, tiny 1x1 piece to do our earrings on. So keep in mind, keep that extra piece. But looking at the back of yours, it looks flawless. So mine do not look as flawless.
Thank you.
On the outer edge, we're going to be switching to brick stitch.
Yep, we're going to do a brick stitch on the edge, yeah.
So now as I'm getting through here, I'm going to cut also a piece of my ultra suede off. Just
so do you want me to do show on this and you do that one?
Sure.
Yeah, because I can do the edge here. I can just leave this little guy like that and trim him down.
As a little post, and then we can post through. You actually, I think I do have a post here. You could put the post through the back.
Or a little pendant.
Yeah, we can do a little
pendant.
pendant.
To do an earring, I'd have to do two, and I'm not doing two.
True. Okay. So I'm going to get ready. So I have my backing here, and I want to make sure that my back covers, obviously, the whole thing, right?
Yeah, and what I do is, you know, I just conserve as much as I can, position it, and I just glue it on there, and then I cut around.
Okay,
so
perfect.
it's the same
so that's my
size.
next task. If I have a little bit of extra thread here or stiff stuff at the top here, should I cut that down or leave it because I'm going to do my earring?
You cut it down a little bit, and the more you do this, the more you'll know, like, how much stiff stuff is what you need on the edge.
Okay.
But yeah, I would cut it down because you don't want that much.
Okay. So then I'm going to go into the corner here.
Because I'm going to trim my little guy down.
Okay. So I'm going into the corner here, and I have it on the side, and I'm just going to E6 or super Locktite it up, right?
Yeah.
Just the exterior. Do I do a little in the middle too?
I do a little in the middle.
So this is nice because I can control this.
As long as you have it really
down.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about doing too much glue.
Okay.
As long as you've just got enough.
So I've got my glue on.
There.
Now I'm going to flip this over and glue it onto.
If you have too much glue too, and you get like globs of glue, it may be like, it may pull or like pucker it a little bit.
So then am I just applying some pressure to this?
Yeah.
And just pushing it down?
Yeah.
Look at that.
Because it's going to just, the Loctite holds really quickly. So you're just going to do that. I'm going to cut myself a tiny little piece of this.
Okay.
Actually, I'm going to use some of that.
All right. Let me cut you. There you go. There's a big one. So Anna's gluing hers on. Let's see if we have any questions while we're getting ready to do the edging. So...
Where's the cat?
Next question, can you get replacement tips? Yes, you can get replacement tips from your thread burner. Can you ever buy double wires on the thread buyer separately? Yes, you can. There are replacement tips. And we've been talking recently about thread burners. I prefer the Thread Zap 2 when it comes to thread burners. That's my favorite one when you're working on it and you're looking at it. So
I got my little circle guy here. I am cutting him out. And what color are you going to put on the edge for your brick stitch?
I guess blue. Should I do blue
What color
again?
is your thread?
My thread is, well, I don't have any thread right now. Green.
Guess it doesn't matter
Green.
then.
My thread is green. And I'll let you stay in view because yours is smaller, so you'll get through it faster. So you're ahead of me already. You're cut yours.
Yeah.
So I need to go in and cut. All right, you do you.
Okay, I'm going to do me.
And I'd rather
And I'm
this
gonna
be a
do
little
this
bit
little
big
green.
than small. I'm doing it right along my stiff stuff.
Yeah, just right along your stiff stuff. Get it to about the same.
Okay.
Because you want them to be as close as possible.
In size. So there's no overlapping. I don't need it a little bit bigger.
No.
Okay, perfect.
Just like if you had made a cookie cutter out of the one and cut the other.
Okay.
there's a little forgiveness here, but
I will say this color makes me, any of you that are hikers or runners, it looks like moleskin. So I'm not a huge fan of this color.
This was obviously the color that was already open.
Yeah, exactly. This was the color that was already
specifically
here.
for this, yeah.
Okay, so so I have to reattach my thread from mine. So am I just reattaching it, tucking it in somewhere?
So this is what I do.
Because mine, I didn't think about it, or I could go to the edge.
I just take the end.
Oh, that's a great idea.
And I just kind of put it in there because you've already got glue in there.
Yeah.
And then I hide it in there.
Perfect.
You can tie a little knot or you can do whatever, but I just hide it in there.
So on yours, you still had the glue, you still had the thread.
Exactly,
Which
yeah.
is good. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So now instruct away, Anna.
So I'm going to
just a little bit
go.
'cause I'll go in the middle.
So my thread is coming out of my blue beads on top. So I'm just going to take it through both layers of my fabric, through my stiff stuff and the backing there. And you can see on this one, hopefully, that you're actually gonna see your thread on the back here. So this is the point where if you're one of those people that like to make sure that the thread doesn't really show or it matches, this is where you want to think about it. The backing and the thread color and the bead that goes around in the brick stitch. Because you're gonna see all three of these up close together. And you can see, well, maybe you can't if my thread is close enough in color. My edge of my backing is here. My thread actually comes in about this much.
So almost like the size of an 11 Seed bead.
Like one of those blanket stitches, sort of. Yeah, so you're going to have a little edge there.
Okay.
Yeah. And I always have like a slight moment of panic when I try to think how to start the brick stitch.
How to start the brick stitch. 2 beads at a time.
So you start with 2 beads, right?
I usually do, yeah.
Yeah.
On the regular
to
roll.
start, yeah. So you're going to pick up 2 beads.
And I'm coming out the back, correct?
Right. You're coming out the back. Why don't you show me how to use the brick stitch?
Okay, so I'm coming out the back. Coming out the back of my piece.
Yeah.
And I'm doing 2 beads or one?
You do 2 to start, right?
Yep.
Okay, that's how I start my brick stitch too when I do
So we're just doing brick stitch right along the edge?
Right,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And then I'm going from the front to the back? Or I'm going to the back, staying on the back?
I stay on the back.
Okay.
So if I'm coming out, I'm gonna...
Okay, move yours over to the middle. Mine can stay off.
Okay. I'm gonna go over about the length of 2 beads. And then I'm gonna go back in through both pieces of my fabric.
So they're almost like your bridge thread that you're tucking under normally.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So it's your bridge thread, yeah. So now I'm at the top side, basically, of my piece. And I'm going to go from, this is the tricky part, like just getting started on brick stitch. Your second bead here, you're going to go from the bottom to the top. So you're coming from the bottom of your bead to the top. I don't know if you have a better way of explaining that. Like when you've taught
the brick stitch,
yeah.
So once you put on your next bead, you can kind of see. So I'm coming out.
It makes a whole lot more sense when you
coming
do
out the top of the bead number 2 there. I add bead number 3, and I'm going from the back towards the top. Only the distance of about. Here's where I think I'm not as precise as you. Only the distance going through both strands. Only the distance of one of those beads. So we have it going through one of those beads there, or through both of those layers. 1 bead long. Going through those layers, going back up between beads number 2 and 3.
Do you think you're going the wrong way through that bead? I think.
When I go in from
the bottom to the top.
Yeah. So you go between beads 2 and 1, and that'll.
Oh, you're doing it. Okay, this is how I do it.
Okay, show me how.
So, so what I do is, so now I add my second bead on. I'm gonna go space over like 1 bead through both pieces of fabric.
Yep.
And then what I do is I actually go through the bead from the top to the bottom. So my thread So you see my thread and the holes of the beads.
Yeah. Yep. We're doing the same thing.
Oh,
we're just talking.
Okay.
We're just talking two different ways. We're just talking through two different ways.
I didn't see you do that. Okay.
And then doing the comments too. The small one you're working on, Anna. First it glues down and good. So there's a lot of side comments and side talk going back along there. We're also about a minute ahead of you recording, so we'll come back to the comment if it seems like we're ignoring you. We're not. We're just ahead of that too. So Donna, thank you for answering a lot of our questions as well. So really quick to go, tacky, dry out overnight to feel really cool. Loctite, Ultra, Super Gel Glue, that's what I'm using as well too. Yeah, there's a lot of, Anna, can you bring it down please? Because you keep going off the top. That's why you're already off the top. Move down, there you go.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
As you're going in and you're adding that second level. So we also can't see what we're doing because we're a minute behind, so we have to switch between two different programs as we're watching and trying to kind of figure that out for you guys. So I'm going in, I'm always starting the back and going towards the front, is the gist of my brick stitch.
Right.
And the more you do it, the more comfortable you're going to get with the spacing of how it is looking and how it's going. So it's almost, you actually kind of want to practice your brick stitch too ahead of time.
Yeah, I would definitely practice brick stitch ahead of time, although I think this is how I learned to do brick stitch. I didn't do brick stitch before
learning how to do it on the embroidery.
Yeah.
So just making sure you go back through. And what happens if I get to the point that I don't go through both layers? I always want to make sure I'm going through both layers.
Yeah, I think there have been occasions where maybe I haven't if I didn't cut precisely. But you want to try to stay through both layers.
Okay.
Just because then it's going to look better.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And I'm going to show Anna's, the back of her one too, so you can see like as you keep going. The green's actually nice because you can see the thread.
Yeah,
and I actually like how that's part of it. I'm starting out mine, so I'm only on bead number 6 here. And then when I get back to bead number 1, if you know brick stitch here, you're going to sew back, basically after you're coming out the top, you're sewing back down through bead number 1. Now here's my next question. I get done this and I realize, oh man, there's some space in between here and I'm not crazy about it. Do I just go in then and add a row of 15s? How would I cover that up if I'm not crazy about that space?
You get better on the next one.
Okay, I get better on the next one. But I could go in and just do a peyote stitch off the 11s.
Yeah, you absolutely
and
could.
fold a 15-0 down.
Yeah, the only thing that I would not do is anything where you're embroidering going through the
back again.
The backing, yeah.
Yeah, my thought was that I could do peyote stitch that last.
Yeah, absolutely.
Attach the peyote stitch to the 11 O's.
And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll make a piece like this, and then I keep going. And because you're doing this brick stitch on the outside, and the holes for the beads are
facing
accessible and facing up, you can then go back through these beads. You can add. So I'll do just a couple more
picot
here.
Trim.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll just show adding a little picot trim.
So this was what we talked about earlier in Facebook, actually. Our Facebook was about taking a previously finished project, and you can always go in and add to it. Don't think that because you're doing one stitch per project that you have to just do that one stitch. You can do different stitches along with it as well, too.
Yeah.
So
I have a little bit of this done, and I'm going to show... I'll use these just for contrast. And I'll go in here and I'll pick up, let's pick up 3 of these guys.
Okay.
And so now I'm working back the other way because I'm going back through my beads. Pick up through, I'm going to go down through the next hole. You can even do, sometimes I do like a little right angle weave. So I'm going to go up through my next bead. Pick up another 2.
Remove your earring that you keep getting caught on. Put your earrings back on you. Hey there. It's like one loop and I just failing.
Okay, there we go.
We're both holding needles. So we're both holding needles and trying to progress.
I keep stabbing myself with this one over here.
Okay.
So right angle weave would be another good one to learn. And you could do a little right angle weave action on the edge here.
And sometimes I feel like I legit feel like the edging makes the piece when it comes to bead embroidery.
Yeah.
I hate seeing a messy back.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that really shows your skill level too.
Is going to be the top of it.
Yeah. one of the things that we learned when I was studying pottery or ceramics, you always pick up the bottom and look at the bottom of the piece, because that's where, if you're not good, that's where you're gonna know.
That's where my mugs from my college class are super, super wonky at the bottom.
You always look at how good someone's foot is.
And then looking here, my feet look nice today. I painted them bright pink to match my 3-year-old. We have matching toes. So then when I get to the top too, you just progress around just like you would with the regular brick stitch.
Yeah.
So fun. So you can see, this is kind of funny because it's legit what we talked about going in and creating at the bottom of this too. So like how you're doing it with the brick stitch, you can keep your stitch more even, and if you go around and see it, then you're not going to keep it on the stitch, thanks to Donna as well too. You can also dye the foundation. So remember with these different stitches too, as Anna's progressing and kind of getting them and having that go off the top, and you know, going from, all right, you have stitch number 1 going in and creating that stitch. Number 2, you can add the peyote on it, but you don't need to add the peyote. You can go in and you can create dimensions, and you can cut it down and do teardrops. You can keep it rounded, finishing it off that you even can use beads with holes. So don't think you just have to use cabochons.
I was doing a lot of these, just little concentric circles, because I just liked playing with the different colors. So that's a very basic, straightforward, no frills. If you want to try something and still come out with a really nice little project, just have fun with your colors.
And then after the fact too, you can go in during this brick stitch and you can add a wire guard to the top. Anna has a little bit of a 3-ring seed bead here, a little trim. You could add it towards the top as well, the one that she's working on, that you can go in and really have fun with the different types of the bead embroidery. Any tips for getting through the stiff stuff if you glued too close to your cab? I keep stabbing myself and bending the needles if I try to hold it with the pliers.
So, I mean, I've definitely done that, and that's where having a thicker, stiffer needle comes into play, because you can see how much Allie's 12 needle is bent just trying to get through all that fabric.
Yeah, it's really, really wonky. And
so, you know, imagine having to push this through if it was stiffer because you had the glue. Yeah,
it's a lot easier. So number 1 with the glue is don't over glue.
Right.
Try to control your glue.
You don't need the glue if you're going to do bezel. You just need the glue so that you're not driving yourself crazy trying to hold the cabochon as you're also beading.
Yep. And then also the nice thing with bead embroidery, for those of you that worry, and nothing says you have to use a cab, you can't use beads, like Anna said she was using those 2 hold. You can go in, you can even, if you want to, use a Rivoli. If you wanted to use something like a chaton, what I've seen people actually do is cut a hole in their stiff stuff, so that way the back of it stays in there. So you don't need to actually do the whole entire thing.
It'd have to be a shallow back, though, because then you'd have the back of your chaton sticking out.
I've seen it where they've even cut that, too.
If you cut the back of a chaton, though...
No, not to cut the back of the chaton. I've seen a hole.
It's like
a hole
blasphemy.
Here. Yeah, blasphemy. I've seen a hole. Some people do bead weaving where they have a hole here, so that way that sharp thing is going through the back.
And then, but how do you stop it from, like, injuring yourself?
Well, you know, that's a good question. By the time you add sometimes the beads on the edge.
I mean, if you can definitely do that. The other thing, because we did have somebody here who had done a lot of bead embroidery, Ashley, she actually did a video that you can watch. She did a piece where it was something similar, where it was a chaton or something that had, it wasn't solid all the way on the back. And she actually used, I want to say, a little bit of clay, like sculpty clay or something.
To round it out.
That would, like, air dry. She set it in that just so that it would hold it, and then bezeled around. Yeah, so it was sticking up higher.
Great idea. So we'll kind of get ready. One thing that I did want to say, number 1, thank you to Anna. Anna doesn't like doing videos, so this was a big step to have Anna come rather than the recorded to do the regular.
I like the lives because
we're interacting with people.
Yeah, and I can't say, oh, I wish I hadn't said that. Erase and then
start over.
Do it again.
You just say it anyway, and you're like, oh well, I already said it, so there's nothing going back from there.
Yeah, exactly. No pressure.
So the takeaways that I'm getting from learning this is, 1, kind of pre-plan, because if you don't go in with a pre-plan to some degree, it kind of gets wonky and off. 2, don't use too much glue. Sue's learning that. Don't use too much glue. You don't glue in. 3, I learned that it's definitely easier as I was working with it to cut my stiff stuff down.
Yeah, definitely. I like cutting it down. You know, give myself a rough idea and a boundary, and then cut it down once I'm done.
And then I'm totally going to practice my brick stitch along the outer edge to make it look as perfectly symmetrical as Anna's, that I have just that 1/16 of an inch of thread showing along the back of
probably
the
all it
cabas
is just
as well. And I really do think I am going to, like, legit, sometimes I say, I'm going to go do these. I'm legit going to make myself a pair of bead embroidery earrings. I learned too early, this one disappears because it's green. I'm not going to make one with a 24 millimeter cap. This is now going to be a pendant, which is cool. I'm going to finish it. I'm going to make it a pendant, but then I might just do the earrings as well too. So I'll hold Anna's up. Or I'll just take Anna's earring to go along with it.
You should wear some earrings like this on the green screen, and then it'll just look like you have holes in your head.
I just have head holes as well too. So if you guys have any other questions, make sure to ask away. We will also go back through and read the comments as well to answer the questions that we can. The cool thing about bead embroidery is, other than adding the back, you can't really do it wrong.
No, and that's one of the things that I like about it. Everybody has their own rules that work for them, and there are some basic stitches that you should know, but other than that, you just sew on what you want and put it back on it.
Yeah, sew it on, put it back on it.
It's very free form.
One thing I do want to say, because I have this ear wire here that Bridget used, going back and showing this. One thing that Anna does is she is doing stud earrings, and this is so smart, that I have seen you take your stiff stuff, attach it to the earring, and then put the ultra suede.
Yeah, and then you
go like
so you make a little sandwich, and you put
the earring backing onto there, and then poke your stiff stuff through and do your final. So this one has, it's hard to see because that one's big, but if your beading section was bigger and this was actually fat, then it is stuck inside of there. So by the time you dough that outer edge, you actually don't have this come off at all.
I found that out, or I decided to do that after just gluing the backs on and realizing they just tear off.
Yeah, you can only hold it for so long with it. Yeah. So that's a great little thing.
So this is a surefire way to make sure that your earring's not going to fall off.
Yeah, that pin that glued on flat post is actually stuck in between there. So that's a great little suggestion. Same for if you have a bail that you want to do. There's a bunch of those bails that have the jump ring facing forward.
Yeah, it's like,
how are you supposed to do that? But that just made me think I could hide that inside the bead embroidery piece as well.
I don't know for over time.
No, we're good. I mean, we're only 2 minutes every time. We're good.
One quick other little suggestion. If you want a neat looking bail and you like more of a natural or
look.
Yeah.
Okay, bring it right into.
So what you're gonna do is either like a piece of, you know what I'm gonna do?
I know what you're gonna do.
Yeah. So you can use this material or anything like it. Cut yourself just a little tab.
So smart, Anna. Why didn't you tell me to do this before this guy got done?
And then same deal, like
put it between. And then put your
and cut it, and then I mean this is a little too big for this, but
great ideas.
There you go, yeah.
Great little ending pro tips and ones to do that now. So these are kind of the fun ending tips of how to get this done. If you do want to check out other bead embroidery videos, like I said, I think it's better to watch this, gain some of those knowledge facts and having us kind of talk through it. And then go back in and watch some of our other bead embroidery. I know Ashley has a bead embroidery video. Teresa has some that she's done bead embroidery. And then expand your world even into soutache. I think once you learn to bead embroider, I think it makes soutache way easier because it's a lot of the same techniques. And you take your technique of your brick stitch and your peyote stitch, or even just that round.
And that's good to reiterate too, is like the basic stitches. If you don't know peyote, if you don't know or understand what backstitch is or what it means, and if you don't know like right angle weave, you want to look at those and kind of brush up on those before you dive into this.
Yes, before you get started, make sure to brush up on those as well. So it has been incredibly fun for us to do this. Anna is working off screen. Allie, Anna is working off screen. Anna's always working off screen when it gets to
my hands
She can't keep
Even at home, I'm always doing something.
She's still, as we're talking, she's over there beading as she's working on it too. But really have fun with it. We actually have cabochons, tons and tons of cabochons that are available on the site. But I also love the idea that you don't need a ton of materials to get started on this. The stitch stuff is not expensive. And like Anna said, conserve it. Make sure that you're only using the section that you need. Same with the ultra suede. I mean, we cut off a fair amount, and look, it looks like we didn't use any with that.
Yeah.
So a little bit goes a long way as you're working on it too. So.
I can't believe the hour is gone already.
I know, the hour is gone already, but this has been awesome. I really do thank you, Anna, for explaining all of this, and I think it's really a great way to get people that may have been intimidated about it to be like, oh, I can do this. I can sew through 2 beads and back through and 2 beads and back through.
I think it's easier than bead weaving.
Oh, I don't know,
I
Anna.
know.
Now I'm going to have to figure out how to bead embroider with 2 needles going on.
I think it's easier because it's more forgiving. You really can't mess it up. I mean, it may not look...
You just sew an extra row of seed beads over the top. What do you do mess up? That goes along with it.
Yeah.
So if you guys do need any supplies, make sure to hit the links below us. Also, if you haven't noticed that big subscribe thing over my face mainly when we're little, make sure to click and subscribe to get regular updates from us here at Potomac Beads. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Have fun creating and get your bead embroidery supplies. Try it out. Thanks to Anna, and I'm going to try to finish my project, and I'll update you guys in our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making.
You'll know if she's wearing it next week because she'll have big holes in her head.
I'll have big holes in my ears and just that one gaping hole in my neck too. So thanks so much for watching, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day and happy bead embroidering.
Oh, I gotta fix